Our guest is Hampden District Attorney Anthony Gulluni. Just about 2 weeks and a few days on the job as we talk. Thank you for coming in, Mr. District Attorney. We really appreciate having you, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Once upon a time, the idea was that the police agencies brought the bad guys to the DA and the courts, and you prosecuted them, and the court took it where it would. They went away or they were freed. That's still true. But you especially have made a point of talking about being proactive to prevent that whole process in the first place, prevent crime. You've talked about a robust community outreach program.
Yeah, it's not so simple anymore, Jim. At least it doesn't have to be. We have to perform that traditional function of prosecuting the cases brought to us by the police departments and the agencies in this county, and that's our fundamental responsibility of keeping people safe through our work in the courtroom. But I think to be truly effective and truly to affect our bottom line, to use business vernacular, we've got to engage in that preventative, proactive work through our community outreach and through getting ahead of some issues that plague this entire county, and opiate addiction is a major issue about which everyone is talking. And there are major issues in our urban areas like Springfield and Holyoke involving hopelessness. I mean, we talk about mental health issues, which is a major problem. We talk about substance abuse, which is a major problem, but we don't talk about the hopelessness that many of our young people in this county, especially in our urban areas, are facing. And if we can get in front of those young people through partnerships with the schools, and particularly Superintendent Warwick here in Springfield, and talk to these kids about the ills of that lifestyle of getting involved in drugs, in gangs, in street violence, and what it's inevitably going to lead to, we're doing our job more effectively, and we're hopefully affecting that bottom line in a humanitarian, fiscally sound approach.
I want to talk about all those things as time allows as we go on, but let's jump right to something you mentioned, the opioid drug addiction and fatal overdose crisis that we're seeing, not just in our area, but really all across the country. Seems to be a symptom of great use and prescription use of pain-killing drugs. That's part of the problem, it seems. Governor Baker and the new Attorney General, General Healy, have just identified that as priorities for them. You did so during the campaign. It's not just a legal problem. You mentioned the health problem, the mental health aspect of it. There is an opioid task force that's been in place for a while, but this seems to be about something more. It is about mental health. It is about people's behavior. You can't really prosecute your way out of this opioid crisis situation. This is going to take a multi-tasked, multi-pointed approach over a long period of time, it seems.
Yeah, there's no question, and you hit on really the problem and the solution. They're interdependent issues. Mental health, substance abuse, and criminality all go together. So it does require a multifaceted approach to get to some sort of solution, at least improvement in the near term. And I think we have to continue the focus on the supply side in terms of prosecuting those folks profiting from addiction. So the discussion often is around the elimination of mandatory minimums and how are we going to focus on the users. That's absolutely the case. But it is that two-phased approach where we need to continue to focus on the people profiting from addiction. The people suffering from addiction on the other side is a public health issue, and we happen to be at the forefront dealing with the criminality that is the outgrowth of that addiction in our court systems. So we have to implement those strategies around the understanding that this is addiction, and Sheriff Ash, who is our longtime beloved sheriff, has been at the forefront of these issues, dealing with that core issue of addiction. How do we get at that and change people's lives so we don't continue the spiral? And I think in the DA's office, we're facing the same issue. So we have to identify the problem when these folks are coming in, committing crimes, whether it's the possession of drugs, or they're committing crimes to support their habits, and have programming around that. And we've begun that process of partnerships with the trial court, with Sheriff Ash and other agencies, BHN and others, to talk about how we can create programming and diversion to address that core issue when folks are coming into the courthouse suffering from addiction, and not so much other issues that come with crime often, but the addiction is the issue. Let's fix that problem so hopefully we don't see them, and it makes sense, again, in a fiscal sense as well.
You mentioned earlier, and I think this all goes in with this too, getting to young people before they're young people in trouble, seeing them in a classroom instead of the courtroom. That's an area where you say you're going to be very proactive.
Yes, and it's undermining my job security in a sense. You know, we want to prevent people from coming into the doors of the courthouse as much as possible and give people opportunities. And fundamentally, I'm in a position as district attorney now to help people. And if I can help some young people who don't have the family structures, Jim, don't have the resources that many of us fortunate people have, if we can augment their lives in such a way as to change that direction by partnering with, again, those community groups, leaders, church leaders, other politicians to say, what can we do to change these people's directions? Give them some opportunity. I'm optimistic that we're having some help here in Springfield by way of some economic development. I think that economic opportunity and our public safety go hand in hand. So hopefully folks and young people see opportunities for their futures and go in different directions. But it's going to be about us getting in front of them, educating them on what's good and what's bad at an early age, and hopefully change that direction so it misses the courthouse entirely.
Talk about the pilot program, the Veterans Court, that you want to really look at folks, veterans, who so often come home from giving great service for this country with post-traumatic stress disorder, other issues, injuries perhaps, maybe an addiction caused by pain from injuries they've suffered. You want to deal with that in a special way.
It's an issue about which I feel very passionate, and many of us do. We understand that those folks going overseas to serve our country and make great sacrifices to keep us safe come back with issues related to that service. They're really outgrowths of that service. So I think we have an obligation to help them become well and re-assimilate back into society. So I was just at a meeting last week with Dave Sullivan, our district attorney up in Northwest, in Franklin and Hampshire counties, and members of the bar, members of the bench, talking about the ground levels of establishing a Veterans Court. And the pilot program is going to be here in Hampden County out of the Holyoke District Court, and we're working on the logistics, working with Soldier On, which is such a great program out in Leeds, Massachusetts, to make sure that we're identifying the veterans, we're getting them to self-report their status as a veteran, and then taking those cases out of the regular criminal stream of cases and giving them the counseling, the treatment, the care that they need and really so deserve. And making sure that we're addressing, again, those core issues of mental health, very often in those cases PTSD, some of the addiction that is coming from that, and the crimes they're committing. Of course, respecting if they're victims and taking the cases seriously. But if we can divert those cases, give them the unique treatment they need, and help them get back on their feet, I think it's a responsibility we all have.
You worked as a program counselor at Salvation Army, I know. You still serve on the board of Salvation Army locally. Do you think that social work gives you a little different take, perhaps, on some of the people, some of the issues that come before you and the courts now that you're DA?
Oh, there's no question. I hearken back to my experience as a counselor with the Salvation Army very often, and especially as a candidate when I was kind of formulating my perspective and my desire to run and the things I wanted to do was very much influenced by that. I was really working with kids from ages 12, 13 to 16 or 17 who were dealing with these issues I talked about, hopelessness and just being rudderless and not having any direction in their lives. And it definitely gave me a sense of what these young people face and what we can do to address those issues to hopefully help them avoid crime altogether. So there's no question that work, as it continues, formulates my positions and helps me kind of be centered in the prosecution side and the community outreach side that I think is so important to my success and our success.
At your inauguration, you talked about special responsibility you feel to the victims of crime, but you also said to the women and men who work in law enforcement. That those two areas always on your mind, aren't they?
There's no question. And being an assistant district attorney beforehand, I got to know from a firsthand perspective what the police do, working every day to protect us, the risks they face every day, day in and day out, doing their work, and certainly the victims of the cases I've prosecuted, folks who have been so affected by crime. I understand how important the work of the office is and what the prosecutors in the office, the victim witness advocates and support staff do that is so important, the direct impact we have, Jim, on the defendants whose cases we prosecute, the victims of those cases in the communities. It's such important work, and I'm honored to have the support of and to be cooperating and working collaboratively with police departments and working hard on behalf of victims and working with the folks in our office to make a difference.
Well, Hampden County District Attorney Anthony Gulluni, thanks for coming in, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.